it mirrors low-level addiction. And so that's why when we talk about mental health around screens is that if we don't have any systems of responsibility or expectations or cultures monitoring or mitigating or at least setting boundaries for, especially for our kids, but even for us as adults, we will create what is very similar in addiction, a withdrawal. I've been looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah, I have too. I think it's one that we're all very guilty of, and for people listening or watching, it's sort of like eating or taking my own medicine right now. But I just want to say, I don't know how many episodes in this is, but I'm pretty impressed with the reception of our fledgling podcast that's growing.
It definitely been getting a lot of fun feedback from listeners, and it feels like it's meeting a need.
Yeah, it's really cool. So I just want to start with a question. How many hours a day do you think you spend on your phone or a screen?
Oh, man, Jonathan, we just lost some listeners now. We asked the wrong question. They don't want to talk about this.
Well, I know people don't want to talk about it, but they're also wondering, like, what the hell does screens have to do with mental health? And we're going to get there. So you're on this journey with us, and we're going to get there. So you've now committed to it. So now you have to stay here with us until we arrive at that destination.
How many? Okay, I'm going to guess for you. You have to guess for me. How many hours do you think I spend on a screen? I would say you probably spend less time on a screen. Well, okay, does work count?
Oh, it's all encompassing from eyes awake to going to sleep at night.
I would say you're probably 8 hours a day.
That's fair. 8 to 10 or 11. I would say it does also depend on the week or the day of the week. I would say you're probably around that same range. I'd say 9 hours.
Yeah, unfortunately, I mean, because I'm on and teaching and videoing and we're podcasting. Now, when it comes to just my phone and doom scrolling on Instagram or Facebook, maybe an hour and a half to 2 hours a day, which is more than I want it to be.
So I use my phone a lot. Like so if you strip out phone time not from work, I'm probably 2 hours a day.
What do you think the average teenager spends a day on a device?
I don't know, because, well, even with the new laws in schools that like make it harder to have your phone, I mean, there's no textbooks anymore in school. Everything's on a Chromebook, right?
Pretty much. Yep.
I mean, the same as an adult, which is wild to me.
Oh yeah.
Sending, like, kids are going to school and they're in a school, in a controlled environment. I would say the average kid probably spends 7 to 7.5 hours a day on a screen just for education purposes.
I think the newest stat that I was reading was between 10 and 12 hours a day. And that's average, which is weird. But I'm thinking about like the amount of information that's coming across.
So over a 7-hour period, the average for teens is 7 to 8 hours.
I don't remember. I don't know what it was like for you growing up, but I don't remember more than a half hour a day in front of a screen, TV included.
No, I mean, we weren't allowed to. I mean, I think growing up, my dad wanted us to take advantage of sort of like the environment we lived in, having land to go run play on and do things like that. So I didn't grow up. We were very wealthy in sort of the experience and the life that, like, and the values that we were taught. But I mean, we didn't have a ton of money. And so the way we had fun was my dad was like, go play, go outside, do this, go ride your horse, go do this, go do whatever. So we weren't on screens or on TV. And I mean, I lived so far out in the country that we didn't even have cable television until I want to say I was like 13 years old. Like growing up, the only TV we had was the local, like 6, 8, 12, 23, and 35, I think. 23 was public broadcast television with like Mr. Rogers, Bob Ross, Reading Rainbow, and things like that.
Bob Ross, Reading Rainbow. I love that. Oh, yeah, I think that the time that we would watch more than an half hour at a time was, like, TGIF, when it was, like, Family Matters, Home Improvement, Step by Step, on a Friday night.
And so obviously it's changed. I mean, technology is growing and changing. So as I've gotten older, I've spent more and more time on devices. A lot of it's because I subsequently am in a career where everything I do is digitally.
Mhm,
What I
mhm.
will say it's shown me, and I was unaware of, I connect it to one thing. So there was a study that we learned about in school in college that they traced fluorescent light bulbs, like the ones you have in classrooms and offices, to like paranoia and anxiety. You're in a room with those fluorescent light tubes and even the sounds they make in them. And if you're in a room like that with no windows and you're under that light all day, it can attribute to like paranoia, anxiety. Um, I want to say it even, and I'm maybe messing this one up, like it even attributed to like seasonal depression and things of that nature. Like it made those symptoms worse. I don't know that part to be factual, so I'll fact check this and update it later. But I do know that they attributed those light bulbs to some sort of paranoia and like different stress effects they did. I can find that study. And you may have even heard of it. But I feel like our phones do the same thing to us.
Well, it's the blue light phenomenon, right? I mean, obviously, people listening, most people will know this, right? Because it's been talked about a lot, but the idea that
So simplify it. What's the blue light phenomena?
so the blue light phenomenon is the fact that the artificial light that our screens put out, emits blue light waves, which are counter productive to red light, and red light is what comes from the sun. And red light, so UV red light waves are healing, life giving. You know, um, they stimulate parts of the brain that are good. And so blue light being artificial, which I haven't read those studies about the fluorescent lights, so I would assume it has somewhat similar in the conversations, right? Is it's not allowing our bodies to engage in the way God designed them from a self regeneration, self healing properties sides of things. It probably short circuits. So I know that blue light short circuits our circadian rhythm, which is our sleep wake cycle, and does not. It stimulates parts of the brain that need to be a part of that sleep wake rhythms.
Blue light's bad. I don't know why my brain always goes to whenever I hear anything related to blue, it goes back to the movie Liar Liar with Jim Carrey.
Oh yeah, yep.
When he tries to lie and say the pen's red and all he can say is royal blue is all he can come out with. What do we do? Well, I want to ask a question and it might be loaded. So why is the topic of phones, devices, and screens so important as it relates to mental health?
Well, I think we need to break it down from a developmental standpoint. I mean, it's super important for us as adults, but it's almost critical for our teenagers and our kids. And the reason that is our brains are dumb organisms in the sense that they will wire to what we put in front of it. So when we say wire, we're talking about new neural pathways. We have these developmental phases in life, and that's usually really explosive from like 3, 4, and 5 years old, and 11, 12, 13, 14, maybe 15 years old, really explosive growth. And that's where we see, people try new things like sports or an instrument, or language development's really big. Bilingual development is really big in those times. But we also don't talk about this. That's where addiction becomes really big at 11, 10, 15, or 16, because our brains are wiring really, really rapidly. And I always tell parents this is where it's really important for for us to be disciplers of our kids in a way that guides them towards good things. And so the phone is a passive instrument, meaning it's neither good nor bad. It's how we use it. And so I want people to understand, I'm not saying that, don't, let's go back to the Amish days or, the frontier days when we don't have any connectedness or devices or anything. They're here to stay. It's about how we utilize them. And most people that we talk about don't have a culture of tech at home, meaning this is a tool. Okay, if this is a tool, what does that mean? That means that we don't have them in our bedrooms. They're down at dinner times. We're not constantly scrolling with them. We place them in a certain place at home. Well, why? Okay, so if we're on that, especially from our kids, our young kids, and our early to mid adolescents, is when we are using them constantly, it's actually rewiring our brain from thinking, insight, forethought, consequence, reaction, higher order, higher level executive thinking to being more basement level thinking of impulse, reaction, emotions, and then the inability to pick up on emotional intelligence cues. And I call it the faceness response. And so when kids are so much into their phones, they're not going to be able to pick up on body language or facial cues or relational cues. And that's not being developed like it should.
So before we go much further, I want to be clear. We're not here to demonize or like scapegoat devices. They're helpful. There is a health component to them, or benefits where they can help. I think it's just important to understand how we use them has an effect on our well-being. Would you agree, disagree, or add to that?
Agree. I mean, think about it. When was the last time you gave your 12-year-old your iPad or your phone or let them play video games and they got off and they were actually happy-go-lucky and engaging? Typically, it's the adverse. They're stressed, they're emotionally inept, they're overwhelmed. It's not a good ending usually.
But I think too, it's how you use it. Like we were out at the winery we go to sometimes, and on Sundays they do this like acoustic Sundays where they have music and food trucks and whatnot. And one of our friends joined us, and she's got a 5-year-old. He's super creative and really intelligent, and he's gotten into making stop motion movies at 5.
That's awesome.
And so he has like structured screen time. But he watched the video and figured out how to do it, and then has made like little like hand drawings and like stop motions them, and thoroughly enjoys it. So I can see where it fuels creativity, how and how long we use it, but I can also see where like, especially in a kid, if you're like, all right, now it's done with that because they can't see anything more than the instant gratification, I guess, when you say, oh, no, we're done, or let's go put this away and do something else, then I guess you can get the negative response on the other side. So I'm not trying to play devil's advocate, but I think it's something to be there. We just need to be aware of it.
Well, yeah, let me really just break it down simplistically. And this is, you can argue this all you want, but this is some scientific stuff that I'll post links to the studies. It's been shown that kids 0 to 2 can base their brain development, their developmental growth can handle 0 hours of screen time a day.
Well, that makes sense.
Right? 0 to 2. 2 to 5, 2 to 6, about a half hour a day is what their brain development can handle. And then 6, 7 to 12 or 13, it's about an hour and a half to 2 hours a day. And then after the age of 16, 17, 3.5 hours a day. It's basically what our brains can handle from an information input sensory.
I mean, in some days I feel like that 2-year-old where I can't handle anything. I'll sit down to look at my computer and go through email and just look at this, and like the fact that I'm just sitting and staring at something other than my dog or other than, something else, I'm just like, oh.
But to your friend's point, it can be used as a creative, productive tool to develop intelligence and enhance learning.
Yeah. And I think really what we're dialing down on here at this part is too much of anything is a bad thing. And you have to just to be aware. Um, we've some of these bigger words that pop out sometimes in the show, such as cortisol and dopamine, and we've camped on those before. If you go back and listen to episode on stress, you'll hear probably the most non-clinical definition of cortisol ever, which was to imagine if you're out on a hike and you come face to face with a grizzly bear, and your cortisol is going to help you decide real quickly whether you're going to fight or run away. And then your adrenal glands kick in, and adrenaline is going to help you, well, how am I actually going to do this? They're going to give you the speed to run or the strength to fight. So when we're talking about screens and stress is a big, I know for me, it took a long time to identify the difference between stress and anxiety. And then that one happens before the other, and it's like one domino that falls before the other one. And then learning how those things regulate. We've already talked about how screens and whatnot affect, but they do have a big effect on cortisol and dopamine. And then sort of how those dings and buzzes and scrolls and all of that instant right now stuff, they tend to hijack our ability to sort of slow down, to have moments of like a lull or nothingness, to then experience moments of like joy, happiness, like, that reward systems that kick in. So it can alter those. And then that messes up our sleep. So I guess, have you ever noticed that you tend to feel more anxious or stressed after being sucked into the warp of checking your phone or staring at your screen for 5 minutes than you were before?
Oh, 100%. But I think it plays into everything else going on too in my life and systems. But it's almost like eating too much sugar.
What? No, there's no such thing as too much sugar.
Well, yeah, we have to have another episode on that one. But yeah, it's almost like you go, that was really good. I enjoyed that, but now I kind of feel gross. And now my stomach hurts. So with like the device piece, now I just kind of feel like a shell of myself. I don't feel connected. I feel disconnected, a little bit discombobulated. Don't feel engaged. I feel distracted. Or there's an addictive pull. I need to go back and look at more, even though I know it's not good for me. And that's the dopamine, kind of addiction piece. And that's why it's so important with understanding our kids is that less than 1% of addiction happens after the age of 25 or 26. And that's when the brain is fully developed.
So if less than 1% happens afterwards, is it 99% of it takes place before?
It latches on, it grabs on before. And that's where phone addictions, screen addictions, video game addictions come into play, is that it fills a void of something. Connection helps numb anxiety. We think it does, or these types of things. And
it modifies your brain's natural reward system.
Speak to that for a minute, because that's a big statement.
The way I interpret it is our brain has a reward system, and there's these neural pathways and chemical and like in the backs of our brain stem. I think that's where that is. You can correct me if I'm wrong. Mm-hmm. That chemicals are released when things are good, like when we experience something that's satisfying or good or that we like. And the way I've understood addiction is, whether it's to your phone, to narcotics, alcohol, porn, whatever it is, you, regardless of whether like, I probably shouldn't do this, and then you do it anyway, your brain can sense that shift and know what's coming, and it alters that reward system so that you're like, you have the same response, and you'll like blip and forget how much time has passed while you're doing something through the same addiction response than when you come off the other side. So it modifies your brain's reward system to where the only time you can get to where you feel moments of happiness, joy, something is really good, is when you engage in those activities. And so in normal life, you tend to experience those less And so there's almost a sense of numb, or like nothing's good enough, or there's this like a gray fog over you. I know that I've very poorly explained that.
No, no, but you're right. And that's what we found recently is that uh, the big social media giants uh, confessed that their algorithms played to that brain reward system to create minor or mini addictions to the algorithms of likes and dings and shares and tag, all that kind of stuff creates as we call it, a dopaminergic, response where it mirrors low level addiction. And so that's why when we talk about mental health around screens is that if we don't have any systems of responsibility or expectations or cultures monitoring or mitigating or at least setting boundaries for, especially for our kids, but even for us as adults, we will create what is very similar in addiction, a withdrawal.
You're never in a resting state. What I would say, so if I look at this from a place of if I'm so part of what I do is in the marketing and brand building space and helping businesses like effectively reach more people, reach them more consistently, reach them more constantly in a purpose-driven, ethical way. There's a lot of terrible marketers out there. I have a great disdain for all of them and try to go the other way. But even in that, there is a tension of what I see and what I implement in the business world that is true of people on the receiving end, meaning that you're creating things that are more pressurized, more intense, shorter, designed to get the most out of someone in the fewest amount of seconds or glances possible. What you're doing is compressing something in that's almost like an espresso shot that's been concentrated to have 10x the effect. And so I would see that if you're trying to get to where you are constantly accessing someone, would it not, and then they're constantly then receiving, would it not then tend to put their body on a constant low level state of alert where it's always looking? And then would that low level state of alert attribute to increased stress and anxiety? And so, like we also talked about in the other episode, you're now taking your baseline and pushing it up higher and higher.
Yes, you speak very right to that, and I think it's. We also call it the fight, flight, freeze response. It's the central, the central nervous system is on higher alert, which means it's just what it means is that there's just low levels of cortisol and adrenaline being allowed into the system. It's like a leaky faucet. And so when you say there's no level of rest or no state of rest, our body needs those faucet to be turned off. We have to have a moment where our cortisol is turned off, our adrenaline is turned off, so that our body can get back to that equilibrium. And homeostasis is another way of putting it. Like it's regulating itself to a place of rest. And if we don't get that, our sleep-wake systems get all out of whack. Our digestive systems get out of whack. Our guts. We can also argue that our relational systems get out of whack. We have less patience to sit and talk with people, to be around people, to have nuanced conversations that of maybe are with different disagreements. We're shorter fused, and it's because then our parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous systems are imbalanced as well. And so we have low levels of fight, flight, or freeze that are on. And so I think it's an interesting conversation because then it's like a disease pathway to anxiety or depression.
If you're then unknowingly sort of rewiring your body's response or how it reacts to things, you're taking away the ability to creatively think, to slow down, to give yourself longer time to be able to process and then take next steps, which makes it harder to regulate impulsive decisions because you're like, hey, wait a minute, this may not be a good idea. Let's be curious, ask some questions here. You're just your life becomes a thumb swipe from one thing to the next. So yeah, we're talking about screens, but how it connects to the larger picture is what's true in micro can relate in macro.
And remember, we're talking about adults and children and teens here. Hopefully, as adults, we've already had that braking system installed. And the braking system is going, okay, I need to turn that off. I need to put this to rest. I need to engage my thinking brain. I need to develop this holistic piece. The way our brains are designed, that does not happen naturally in teenagers and kids without safe, trusting adults that help set that up. And that's the importance of parenting and discipline and boundaries and growth is those things need to be set up. It's almost like you have to set up the operating system and then you need to put parameters around that and you need to work it where that is just doesn't happen naturally on its own. And so we're talking about adults as on one end and kids on the other and adolescents on the other. If that's not set up, that doesn't get set up on its own. So how many of you listening, and Jonathan, I'd be curious on this one, how many of you have met people or worked with people that you're like, okay, their driver's license says 32, but I swear I'm talking to a 12-year-old.
Oh, all the time.
And that right there is talking about all this stuff. Those systems never got put in place.
Oh yeah. And I know we're looking at two ends of the spectrum between kids and adults, but talk multitasking. Like I feel like that with having instant access to information at you all the time and at your fingertips through screens, and not only just looking at them all the time, but having the ability to just go get something immediately, it has to create mental fatigue. And also it makes me wonder how much of the way we do things do we think is under the guise of multitasking nowadays, and that's really just BS.
Yeah, I agree.
Like I feel like it fragments your mental capacity, which I know would leave you to a higher risk of burnout.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I know that I'm at the end of my day, and I'm guilty of this, just a scenario or an example, going for a walk at the end of the day, or I've talked about this before, periodic like breaking points where I can transition my day from morning, afternoon to evening. If I've had a long day where I've done a lot, I've been, people focused all day, and I'm in this mode where it's normally transition time, or say you're riding home, you have a longer ride home, you're like, that's my quiet time. I can listen to the radio, do whatever. If I'm entering into that part and I'm like, there's something I need to do, and the desire is like, let me just go finish this. No, I really want to go walk. Oh, wait, I have my phone with me. I can just look this up quickly while I'm on my walk. Well, before you know it, I'm on my walk, and I have walked, and I've done that thing where if you're listening to this, do not text and drive, but you have always been in a car, and for most of you have been in a car and you've done that thing where you're like, wait a minute, I just drove through 5 stoplights and like, they're all green, but like you were zoned out on something else and you were just going through the motions with what was in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
I've done that where I've gone on a walk before, and like I've gone on my walk and I get to the end and I'm like, I didn't do anything. Like it keeps you from being present in the moment, which means the benefits, this would be my question for you, then the benefits of going on that walk are null and void because I replaced what was healthy with something that just needed to get done because I broke up my boundaries, and then that need to just instantly get something done because I have a screen or a supercomputer that's accessible to me took me away from the thing that was good. And then now left me with the rest of the day ahead of me, coming back into the rest of my day, showing up for clients, then going and being present with my girlfriend and her family, because I've now upped my level of anxiety and the stress on my body in a negative way because I allowed the idea that I can multitask really quick. Oh, I won't do this very long. And then before you know it, my whole 30-minute walk was just gobbled up by just thumb flips of looking for one thing. Oh, that's another. Just one more second. Just one more second. Just one more second.
Yeah, you're right. And I think we have to be disciplined on how we engage it. And that's where I have a lot of talks with parents and parenting a lot is, do we have conversations around it, or is it just carte blanche, they can do whatever they want? And I think it's you need to set up some parameters. You need to have a culture of tech at home, expectations around that, and do your best to adjust. Dr. Jean Twenge, Twenge, is a researcher out of San Diego State, and she wrote a book a while ago called iGen, like iPad, I-Gen, and she and I have been on several panels together. We've talked on several different occasions together, and she asked this question. She goes, "What happened in 2007?" Anxiety and depression nationally spiked and has continued to go up in 2007. So she goes, what happened in 2007 to indicate that spike?
That was right before the economy collapsed.
It was. It was the first year that a majority of the households had a smartphone.
Oh, yeah. That's right around the iPhone and everything came out.
Mm-hmm. iPhone came out about 2 years, 2005. It takes about 2 to 3 years for people to adjust. The iPhone or the smartphone, Android or, iPhone, every household, a majority of the households in the United States had access to a smartphone. And that was the year that anxiety and depression spiked and have continued to increase.
That's interesting. This is a good segue into sort of some practical things that we can take. And also, if you look at I think it correlates because it indirectly correlates, but I think it'll explain why having barriers and ebbs and flows from, say, technology help you stay in a better state of, calm, less anxiety, as you just pointed out. What was also true is if you went back and looked at the number of cases of, like, if you take like World War I, World War II, and I don't know if they took it out to the Korean conflict or Vietnam, but World War I and World War II specifically, from the time you were stateside to in the combat theater to out of the combat theater and then back home was much longer than it is now. And so a lot of those soldiers, studies have shown that the rates of depression and anxiety and like PTSD from combat were a lot lower. One, we weren't tracking it as much, but two, it was lower because the soldiers, they noted, had much longer time to be from the time they left home to when they got back. Nowadays, you can be in your living room in a conflict zone and then back home, 36 hours later. Or if you've done a tour, you can be, 6, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 months, and then 30 hours later, you're right back home. So you're like blipped out and dropped in. So your body doesn't have time to deregulate from being in a high stress state into a zero stress state. So you're being pulled out of one area to the other. I will probably get a lot of flack for this, for unintentionally making the comparison between servicemen and women to technology. But the speed at which we have access and are entering into and exiting things, be it on your phone or in work, coming from work to home, it seems as the more we speed it up and have an instant in and an instant out, it has a much more negative effect on the human body and our well-being than it used to.
Well, because it negates the opportunity for us to engage in pausing and contemplative practices. And I'll use some big words there, but what I'm meaning by that is just waking up and taking notice of how your body is feeling as you're getting out of bed, grabbing a cup of coffee or some breakfast and just noticing how your heart and mind are doing. Getting outside, like you said, on the walk and noticing the beauty around you and the green trees and the blue sky and the birds and the beauty that is there. Like we've lost the ability to sit with nuance because, like you said, we're going from kind of high intensity to high intensity, or going from high intensity to nothing, and our bodies can't handle that, versus, the becoming comfortable with nuance and slower pace.
So that's easy. It's easy for you and I to say. We grew up in the in-between. Like, I can remember world before.
We're the last generation that remembers the world before.
And I know the world after. And so it's like, okay, I can look back and say, yeah, I remember experiencing waiting for a friend to call but still going about whatever it is I was doing, knowing that like there's a very good chance they'll call me and I won't be home. Now I can also remember, now I know very well being in a world where, oh, I need to make sure I have this with me because it might ring. And for whatever reason, I need to make sure that I'm immediately available to pick this up. Now, a lot of that is on me, but how do we very simply make that, bring about that awareness to the younger listener or to the parents with kids that just don't know, or like they've never known anything different? How can we proactively take small steps towards creating those riverbanks?
I think the first thing is just to be blatantly honest about your tech use. Are you happy with it? Not happy with it? How often do you use it? I think we have to take stock and be really aware and being honest about, yeah, you know what? It's more than I want. Okay, if that's the case, then what would be ideal? Well, it'd be ideal if I only used it 2 hours a day. Okay, is that realistic? Probably not. Okay, so what are we going to do to decrease? What are we going to do to unplug? So one of the things I'm working on, I'm in my office right now at home. My practice as of these last couple of weeks has been when I get up and leave my office, my phone stays on my desk. It's turned up so I can hear it ring, I can hear it ding, but I leave it on my desk. So now when I go with to engage with my kids or my wife, it's not a point of, instant gratification, or it buzzes in my pocket, or it rings, or I'm tempted to check this or that. And then when I come back to my office, I'll check it. But usually, and then I'll be honest, I've not been very good at this. But then in the evenings after I'm done with work, I try to leave it either on my bedside table, in the kitchen, or on my desk. And it doesn't consume my evenings. Haven't quite got there yet, but
I do a similar practice, and I don't know why I have a hard time with my phone. The excuse is I use it as my alarm clock. But for you watching on YouTube, my Apple Watch that I wear, every night around 7:00, it comes off my wrist and goes on the charger in my office. And that's just the habit that I developed just when I got it for whatever reason. So I wonder how much of that would be true, like reintegrating a habit of one good piece of awareness. I think that's the first step. Naming, am I happy with it? Am I not happy with it? Let's be realistic. What's the awareness piece? And then based on that, what shifts do I want to make? I think I would make a list of get to, have to, or get to, or have to, want to, have to. Like your phone use, break it into 2 categories. This is when I have to have it. This is what I need it for. This is the have to, get to, and then the want to side of it. Okay, not everything you have to do requires you having your phone or screen near you. I know there's times in my week where by the end of it, I'm done. And instead of reading this book on a Kindle or my iPad or listening to it with headphones in my ear, okay, how can I be analog? And that's something I put in my life. What are things that I can do to be analog, to be away from things? And so just picking up a paperback or hardback book and reading and scribbling it with a pen helps me regulate and eliminate some of the times when I'm needing to be on a digital device somewhere. A couple other boundaries. What are your thoughts on creating screen-free zones in your house?
It is absolutely necessary. I've said this numerous times, we've lost the ability to have conversations, I think, as the majority of a society, and I think that starts at home. And so to create screen-free zones where we're not distracted by our screens. And so but here's the thing. If you have kids under the age of 10, you get to decide that as a parent, right? But if they're over the age of 10, I want you to think about how do you engage them in that conversation? Because a lot of times we've polled kids, and kids would agree that they're using their screens too much, and they want somebody to help them not use it as much. So there's a desire there to engage them in that. So we have I live here in Texas. We have a ranch style home. There's no basements here in Texas like other places, and it's about a 3,400 square foot home. So not super huge, but big enough that, from one side of the house to the other is a little bit of a walk. But our living room is above our garage, and that's where we have our TV. That's the only place we have a TV. And we've talked about, do we want a TV downstairs in near the kitchen? And we're like, no, we actually have to go out of our way to go watch TV. So we're okay with that. So we try to make that with our screens too, a little bit of how do we go out of our way to engage in a screen. So my computer stays in my office.
I think it also makes you appreciate those moments better. When you go watch TV, that's what you're going to go do. So then you're less likely to have the TV on and then when your face buried in the phone. Or you're not like those annoying couples that you see in public. Yes, I'm going to say annoying because I think it's the most ridiculous thing in the world when you're going to go spend money to go out to a restaurant and then you're going to sit across the table from your wife and kids or your girlfriend or your friends with your face buried in your phone. You because you're so used to it, you're paying money to disrespect your people in your immediate proximity. That's really what it is. You might think, no, I'm just answering emails. I'm going to get on a high horse for a minute. You could be more proactive in how you manage those things so that when you're at dinner, you could put your phone down for 30 minutes and not have your face in a screen and then give your family, friends, wife, and kids some of that time. That annoys me to no end.
And you might be the family that everybody's like, well, and that's another conversation too. When should I give my kid a phone? When they're responsible enough to handle a phone?
When I have friends that they have a rule at the dinner table or if they go out to eat, that's time, like it works for them. No phones on the table. When they come home from the time, like kids get home from school until after dinner, their phones go in a basket because when they get home, they're like, hey, you're going to go do homework and you do this and your phone's going to go basket, let it charge, whatever. And then after that, sometime between after dinner and bedtime, you can have screen time. I'm not saying there's a right way. You have to get creative based on your awareness and decide, okay, these are the things that I'm going to do. But if you say, well, I can't do that, my job says this, when I do go out and do it with my family, I have to have it with you all the time. That's true. You may have to have your phone with you, but you can put riverbanks in place to where just because you're always accessible, you're not always available. And then to flip that on that different side of the same coin, you also have freedom to decide when your screens are accessible and then when they're available. Like you always have access to it, but you don't have to go make it available to you.
And I think, like we talked about earlier, you just have to make sure that you're willing to have these conversations, be honest about them, and then allow yourself about 30 to 60 days of adjusting and engaging in that process before it creates a new neural pathway. Don't get so disgusted with yourself that you didn't do what you wanted to do in a week. It's going to take longer than a week to undo some of these things. And be gracious with your family too. But you can achieve a new equilibrium. One of the things we love doing, and I'll say this and maybe we can wrap this up with this. Think about doing a 90s week sometime throughout the year and, watch TV only when it's on. So live TV, have your phones anchored someplace, like it's a landline, but like get outside. We did that last Thanksgiving and it was fantastic. We were outside playing football and driving remote control cars and just engaging in family. It was like we all committed to that. And so like we're heading out in October to a conference and we're going to go up to the Smoky Mountains in Tennessee and we're getting a cabin for 4 nights. And we basically agreed already that we're not doing any tech. Even if there's a TV, we're not doing that just to unwind. So pretty cool.
I think the big one for me was screens with this one. And then we've got some things we'll put in the show notes and that you can grab is that, and I want your input on this too. Looking at mental health and getting really simple with it. Every day we're faced with decisions of what we consume, what we intake, whether it's the food in our bodies, the liquids that we drink or don't drink, the activity that we engage in, and the things that we do. We have decisions that we're faced with, and we have to be very strategic in saying, okay, I'm going to eat. I could eat this or I could eat this because I know that this is better for me, but I really want this. Okay, but you should be doing what's best for you based on what is right for your body and your context. I think the same is true with screens. If you're always cramming your brain full of, the unhealthy light, the just filling up the space that's there. You have limited hours in a day, you have limited time in a day and limited space to do anything. If you're filling it up full of things that are just instant hits and quick wins and all the espresso shots, the crash and the come down from it's going to be really bad for you. And you're going to limit how well you're going to feel overall. So yes, screens are here to stay. Like they're as much of a part of our life as the sun shines and the moon comes up at night. They're here and they're going to be here. But how we optimize them and how we use them as a tool for good in our lives is what really matters. And knowing that, yes, too much of a good thing is a bad thing. And so just learning to regulate how much you consume screens and digital content and that media, and then how much of an impact it's having on your body and your overall well-being is going to be directly connected to that type of consumption. So, and just be simple with it, give yourself 10 minutes a day where you just put it away. I have friends that have decided, hey, I'm going to take a break from social media. And they're like, what I realized from taking a break from social media is for about 4 days, it sucked. I was just craving and jonesing to see what was happening on Instagram and Facebook and TikTok. But then I realized I also wasn't really using my phone as much. And then I also realized that I was way more worried about missing things and people being around me and people going on than was really even the case. Like my life tend to be as chaotic as I thought it would be if I didn't have this thing with me all the time. It was not nearly the case. And then things just kind of kept on going. Life continued to happen, and there was just more space for it to happen.
Well, I would love to hear from our listeners too, those that have tried some new things, what worked for you, what didn't.
This was a bit of a random episode. It was a big topic, but we didn't want to flood you with a lot of just jargon. It's just very practical, and obviously you can tell we're both passionate about it. But I just want to leave you guys with a question. If you took 10 minutes and sat down and analyzed your screen consumption, your screen time, what's one practice that you could implement between now and January 1st that would help move the needle for you even 10% better? So, well, guys, we appreciate you. Be sure to leave us a rating and review, like and subscribe wherever you consume your podcast, and reach out to us if you have questions, if there's a topic you want discussed, if there is a resource that you are wondering is available, or you just have silly questions and what have you. We're here and we're not going anywhere. So you guys are great. We'll see you right back here on the next episode of Mental Health and Simple Podcast.